Okay, hi Caleb, this is your mom. I know that you are going to be helping Dad next week while you guys are hunting, changing his arrays, and I wanted to make this video so that you will have at least watched it being done one time, and you can watch the video over and over and over again if you want to, but I wanted to give you a good little tutorial about how to do it. So it takes about 15 to 20 minutes, and the first time I did it, it took me close to 30 minutes, so don't freak out if it takes you that long. Everything that you need is going to be in this bag, and Dad knows everything he needs to, so he'll have it all together. But I take out this folder, I open it up, and there's a calendar in here that tells us what day it is and what setup we're going to be using today. The doctor has written this prescription of all of it and shown us all these pictures that shows A and B, which is two configurations for the arrays, and we're going to alternate the we're going to alternate the arrays so that Dad's head won't be too sore. 2 days ago we placed the arrays in the B position, and today's the 29th, so we're going to place the arrays in the A position. I'm using a calendar so I don't forget. So we have the A position and the B position marked on all of these prescription sheets. So we have the front array, and then we have the back array, A and B position. We have the left side, A and B position, and you see here that this array is up higher from the ear. And then the right side, the array is pretty low on the ear. In fact, we have to cut away part of the tape, so I'll show you that later. But these pictures show the position. The whole reason for this is to minimize the amount of irritation on the skin. And it's,
You want to show on my head?
Yeah. So this is Dad's head, and today he's had these arrays off for about 2 hours, and he's shaved, or 3 or 4 hours, I guess, and he's shaved. So it's a little irritated, but not crazy. But he has a lot of little bumps and a little bit of dry patch right here that he's been working on, trying to get that cleaned up a little bit. And if you look at the back, you can see some sort of stripes. So the goal is to try to minimize the irritation. So when we place the arrays, the position of the arrays today is probably going to be this way, so that we can avoid putting them on top of the same spot that they were on before, so we can avoid irritating those any further. So I've got this elastic dressing retainer that will wrap around his head at the end, and I've pulled a little bit out to the side and cut about a 6-inch piece off, so I'm going to set that aside. I also have these gauze sponges or whatever. I'm going to open up one of those and lay that out, and some alcohol next to it, because I'm going to use that in a minute. I'm just sort of laying everything out, and I'll need some tape. I keep that handy where Dad can reach it, because he's going to use that. Then we have these four arrays, 2 that are white, 2 that are black, and it's important that the black go in the front and the back, and the white ones are going to go on the sides.
Wait, say that again.
The white arrays, and you can tell they're white because the tip of the electric outlet thing is black or white. The white ones talk to each other, and the black ones talk to each other. Okay. The 2 black arrays need to be in the front and the back, and you can tell from the pictures because they're outlined in black on the front and the back. But on the picture, the sides are not outlined in black. They correspond with the white arrays, the arrays with the white tips. Okay.
So sides is white, fronts and back is black.
Yeah. And we're going to open up, this is how I do it. We open up all the packages, and I stack the two black or white arrays over here. Kind of just keeps it all neat and organized. And same thing with the black. Open up the packages, pull them out. It just saves me time later. And then just lay them out. And then I take the scissors, and this is all per the doctor's prescription. I take the scissors, and on each one of the arrays, I'm going to cut a little bit of the material, and I'm only cutting the tape. I'm not cutting the cord, and I'm not cutting into the array itself. I'm just cutting the tape so that when it's on his head, it'll have a little bit of flexibility, where right now it doesn't have much flexibility. Otherwise, it would be a little bit more annoying. So I'm going to cut about 1 inch on this side of the cord and 1 inch on this side of the cord. Doesn't have to be perfect, but just right up next to the cord, I'm cutting that off. On the front array only, so the very first one that I cut, and according to the doctor's prescription, he shows you right there where to cut. I'm going to cut a little part of it off. Otherwise, it's going to hang down over his eyes, and it's going to irritate his forehead a lot. So we're just going to cut a little bit of it off, just enough. We want to leave some tape so it'll stick to his forehead, but not a lot. So I'm going to start cutting here, and I'm just going to cut kind of a curved arc out of it right here. It'll look like the picture, okay? And that's going to get thrown away, and I've got my strip cut there.
Can you match it up to the picture really quick?
Mm-hmm. So it looks then like this. And in the picture, it shows it with the picture and with this piece cut out right here. So it's going to look like that with the cord sticking out on the left side.
Awesome.
And if you're not sure which side it should be, the very last picture shows the top of his head with his nose right here. See that look? Even looks like Dad. And it shows right there is the wire. So when you're looking at his face, you want the wire on the left side, and you can see that in this picture. So this will be a good picture to refer to know which direction to place the array on his head. I think the key to the wires is the wires can be really annoying, so it's really helpful if all the wires are at the top of the head and as close to each other as they can be, basically, so that you end up with kind of one ponytail, and they're not coming from far away directions to meet in the middle, but they're actually basically as close to each other as they can be at the top of his head. So if you look at this array placement, the front array has the wire at the left, at the top of his head. And then we'll keep that in mind as we're placing the arrays. So I'm going to continue cutting. Only the rest of the arrays, I'm only cutting on either side of the wire, about 1 inch. Okay. And then I'll do that real quick, and then we'll be ready to start placing the arrays. Okay, just keeps him from being too annoying on his head. Okay, we're going to place the arrays now on his head.
All right, I'm going to...
After we clean his head. And remember, the most important thing with this is, the more alcohol, the better. Where alcohol is concerned, more is better. Always remember and never forget. I'm going to put a whole bunch of alcohol. I'm just pouring, this is 70% alcohol, pouring it on the gauze pad. Okay. And this is going to sting a bit. Roxy is going to be really helpful and be right in my way. And I'm patting this, rubbing a little, but mostly patting this very, very soaked gauze pad with alcohol to clean. If there's any adhesive left from the erase, clean that off because you don't want any left over. It's pretty uncomfortable. The other thing is if he has any sores that are kind of open and oozing, though that oozing, you really want to avoid getting anything oozing under the array discs because that oozing is liquid and it's going to keep from making a connection, an electrical connection. So that's another reason why you want to be sure and avoid the sore spots. That and it hurts. Okay. So once you've got it good and clean, give it a few seconds to dry.
Okay,
You can
Roxy.
see it's pretty red. We're going to do our best to avoid the red spots. Okay, I've got these arrays, and the arrays have this sticky backing. So I'm going to start removing the backing, and it comes off pretty easily sometimes. Sometimes it doesn't if the arrays have been stored in hot or a cold environment. They might be too sticky. So when you're taking it off, the backing off, you might notice that it's difficult to remove. Just be really careful and try not to rip the white cloth tape too much.
It's
This came off pretty easily,
uber
so
sticky too.
it's pretty sticky. So we've got all of this white stuff is sticky, and you want to try to avoid folding it over and landing on the gel, which is on the insides of the discs. We've got the array like this, and we're going to look at our position, which is position A. Position A on the front of his head is going to be further to the front. So we're going to be careful to,
That's the part you cut.
yeah, the front of the array is the part that we just cut off, and we actually want that placed pretty close to the front of his head, and that's going to be pretty sore. This is the most sore spot that Dad has. But if you look, this is where the array was yesterday or earlier today, and we're not placing a disc over this spot. It's actually going right between that spot. That the discs are here and here, and the sorest spot is right here, so it's going to miss that. And if you look, I'm doing this in a little bit of at an angle on his head, so it's not straight back, but leaning a little bit toward Dad's right side, because that's the side that we're trying to aim for. And I'm going to just carefully place this paper down a little bit, but I'm not going to completely smooth it out because we have other arrays to place and we might need to move things around a little bit. We try pretty hard to only place the arrays one time. If I think I've made a mistake and I have to pick them up and move them, I risk disconnecting the gel on the back of the discs, and I don't want to do that. So I try to get it right the first time. Okay, now we're going to move to the back, and I'm going to flip over the prescription paper and look at the back side. We're again in the A position. The A position is up a little bit further, and I'm taking a look at this imaginary line through the middle of the discs, and it's going to go through the right side, his right ear. It's going to go across the middle, and then it's going to angle up almost to the top of his left ear. That's going to be how I judge. It's also a little bit angled to the right. So I'm going to remove the disc, or remove the paper carefully so I don't, and I already did screw it up. because I let this fold over. I did not mean to do that. So I'm going to carefully disconnect, unfold this, and a little bit of the gel came off on the sticky paper. That's not what I want. It's not too bad, but try not to let that happen.
This is the what not to do section of the
Yeah,
video.
this is the what not to do section of the video. But that wasn't too bad. Okay, and again, I have the wire on the left side. I'm going to hold the wire here. It's up a little. And so I'm just going to hold it here. I'm going to kind of pay attention to where he had it before. And I'm keeping in mind that I'm trying to avoid those spots. So I'm actually going to go, there's the spot I'm trying to avoid. And there's the spot between the two arrays. So it looks like I avoided it. So that's good. And I'm just going to gently press down just the array discs, and the rest of the tape I'll finish off a little bit later. So we're going to move on to the white arrays now. And again, we're going to take off the paper. This came off pretty easily, so no big problems there. And according to the paper, we want position A, which is going to be up pretty high, maybe an inch or so. The tape will be about an inch or so above his ear. And we want A, the center array, the line that goes through the center 3 discs on the array, are going to basically cut to the very back of his ear. Remember, the cords need to aim to the top of his head, so I'll kind of lay them up there. And then the center of the 3 in the middle are going to be up about an inch above his ear. And remember, we're trying to avoid the sore spots. So if you kind of let that, to kind of take a look at it and make sure the discs aren't really...
Move your hand back again. Sorry.
So I'm trying to avoid the sore spots. So if I look, this sore spot, I'd probably avoid it now. Okay. So now we want to kind of smooth down all these here. Now the key is we don't want a lot of overlap because this can be pretty uncomfortable. We also don't want this white paper. This white tape can stretch, but we don't want to stretch it because if you stretch it, it becomes kind of uncomfortable because it'll want to stretch back. So if you stretch it out and then tape it down to his head, it's going to be uncomfortable for him. So if it stretches out like that, let it relax and let it tape kind of loosely. So it's okay if it kind of folds itself over a little bit. It's not that big a deal. The key is we don't want any of these flaps to get underneath an array. So I wouldn't have wanted to put this down here because it would have gotten underneath where the gel is. And we don't want that to happen because it'll break the connection. The gel has to be the only thing touching his head. Nothing should get between the gel and his head. And if you look over here, that's actually going to happen. The gel has a flap right underneath it. So we're going to need to do some cutting. This array needs to end right here. And this flap is just too long. So we're going to cut this off. Alright, so it's not in the way. There. No big deal. That one's not going to be in the way now. And we're just going to smooth this all down. It's never going to be perfect. We're just going to smooth it all down and just make sure we don't have any of the flap underneath the disc. more to place.
Ah.
Okay, and this one is the last, it's the right side. And it's gonna be the center. Okay, the cord is gonna go up. So we're gonna hold it like this, not like just hold on to the cord. The cord is gonna go up, and again, the 3 discs in the center are gonna basically, you're gonna draw a line to basically the front of his ear. And if you can see, that's where it's also going to miss the sore spots that are here and here. So we're going to actually, and it's going to be pretty low on the ear on the right side. So we're going to go ahead and tamp down the arrays. But then we have to do a little bit of cutting to make it more comfortable and avoid a lot of overlap. So here we're going to cut a little bit. Don't really need to cut it, I guess. But down here, we don't want this tab. We're going to kind of cut around the ear because otherwise it's just too much. Probably wanted to leave a little bit more. I think I cut a little bit too much off because we want to give it the chance to stick underneath the array. I should have probably left a little bit more than that, but it's not the end of the world. I like to cut these long tabs off that hang down right in his face because I just don't think they're necessary. This one's right close to his eye, so I'm going to cut a little of that off and try to make it look kind of smooth. So I'll cut the corner kind of smoothly. These scissors are not, they're sharp, but they're not pointy, so they're not going to hurt him or anything. I like to leave it like that so it doesn't look bad. I folded that tab over, so I'm just going to cut it off because it's not really necessary. Just make some smoothing. And that looks pretty good. So I untied all the little bread ties that held all of these guys together. So now I have all of the, and you can see where all the wires ended up. This one ended up here, this one ended up also at the top of his head right next to it, and these two ended up right next to each other here in the back. So all of the wires ended up pretty close. This one we're going to want to aim toward up a little bit. Basically, we want them all to end up ending in the same place. So this one's going to go up and then head to the back. This one is, and you can twist the wire so that it lays sort of flat. You can kind of feel how it wants to lay. If it's trying to stick up, you might just need to twist the wire a little bit so that it wants to lay down. And what you really want to do is end up, do you see how all these cords are all different in length? We don't want that. What we really want is for all the cords to end up the same length or at the same place at the end. So personally, after a lot of trial and error, I figured out that if I start with them all in my hand together at the same length, and then I hold on to them, I can work my way up by just squeezing until I get toward the top, and then I can make the wires lay down the way they need to maintain this position. And so if you look at these wires, essentially they're all laying pretty flat. This one's a little bit crossed over, which is not really ideal because it's going to be kind of uncomfortable when he lays down. So I'm just going to do a little bit of twisting so there's not a lot of overlap. No big deal. But now we've got all the wires essentially pretty close to the top of his head. They're all together and they're all going to end up about the same length. Now we need a piece of tape, which is this medical tape. And we're going to cut off about a 2-inch piece of this tape. And I like to go ahead and tape this up at the very top, so I know it's in the right position and it's not going anywhere. Okay? And then I just take the 4 cords and split them into 2 cords and start twisting. No big deal. Pretty loose. Twisted. This just keeps the cords all together so they're not tangling or separating. Just twist them until you get to this taped piece here that's pretty close to the bottom. And you take another piece of 2-inch piece of tape, medical tape, and we wrap it around the 4 cords here. Just keeps it all together. Okay? The last step is I take the latex stretchy Asian pear cover and I just stick it on the set of wires, and this basically just goes right on his head like a little baby cap in the nursery, and it sort of holds all the wires kind of close to his head. That way they're not kind of moving around, or sort of, especially at night, keeps them sort of in one place. Sort of just keeps control. Okay, how's that? Does it feel okay?
Good.
And then I give him a little kiss.
And I say thank
He
you.
says thank you. And I say you're welcome. And I say at least it's not a colostomy bag.
True.
Even though if it were, I would change
You'd
that
still do
too.
it.
I'd still do it. But I'm glad it's not.
Me too.